All right, everyone. I'm Doug Pecanics.
I'm Eric Tang.
Welcome to the first ever Livepeer Fireside Chat. This is a new format we thought that the community might appreciate, where anyone who's sent in questions about Livepeer through the forums, the chat room on Gitter at gitter.im/Livepeer. Anyone who's sending questions, now's our opportunity to spend 15 minutes, 30 minutes answering them, getting into some of the details about Livepeer, where we're at, where we're going. So, like I said, new format for us. We'll give it a try, but we'll get started.
Yeah, we aim to have this for about 15 to 30 minutes.
Cool. Cool. So we've been hard at work building out the Livepeer network and have some milestones coming up. So, Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about where we are with Livepeer right now?
Yeah, so the team's been working hard for the past few months, rewriting our entire infrastructure. And where we are right now is basically we are about to do a testnet soft launch. And what that means is for the first time, we're releasing software so that anybody is able to run this in a testing environment where people will be able to get test Livepeer tokens, will be able to run nodes as a broadcaster, as a relayer, or as a transcoder, and is able to participate in the Livepeer protocol where the economic incentives are also built in. Now, of course, this is run in a test environment where it's running on our own private Ethereum network. And it's running our own in our own test infrastructure, but anyone's able to participate in this period.
Cool. So you mentioned participate as a transcoder, a relayer, these sorts of things. But what if someone just wants to broadcast video? Can they do that through Livepeer?
Right. So if someone just wants to broadcast video, they have a couple ways to do this. One is to download the software and run a node and broadcast the software, broadcast the video into that node. Or we have a desktop application that we're releasing very soon, and it's an Electron app similar to how like Slack will work on your laptop, and you can just pop that open, and it'll have an interface for people to broadcast video into the network and also view the video from the network.
Right. So anyone that wants to go live from their desktop can just double-click this app, press Start Broadcasting, and then they'll be broadcasting the video into the Livepeer network, but what does that mean? Like, how would someone watch the video?
Right. So as the video comes into the network, they will be delivered in a peer-to-peer fashion directly into people's computers. So if you have viewers, they can either also download the same application and view that video by just pasting in the stream ID, or they can also go to a centralized web page where the video will be streamed through a traditional CDN.
Cool. So to make sure I understand that right, anyone who cares about peer-to-peer and decentralization can watch the video by running the Livepeer software and get it directly from their peers. And I think more importantly, developers who are building decentralized applications can include video in a peer-to-peer way.
Yeah.
But if you want your video to be able to reach, thousands or millions of people by sharing a link on Twitter or Facebook, and those people don't have Livepeer, don't care about consuming in a decentralized way, they can still just click a link and watch it through a CDN.
Yep.
So I think that's a nice hybrid approach that will let broadcasters' videos reach the masses kind of before some of these decentralized apps that everyone is building out in the future are available and here to stay.
Yeah.
I think this decentralized tech space in general is really very early, and it's at the infrastructure phase. So we all believe in these kind of decentralized apps that are coming in the future, but we know it'll be a little while before they're here. They're fast, they're easy to use, they're cheap. And in the meantime, these sort of hybrid solutions that still let you start to build and get some of the benefits of decentralization, but still be able to reach everyone in the mainstream is like an interesting way to go.
Yeah.
Cool. So you mentioned testnet, test token, test protocol, and some of these like deeper roles in the system. These are roles that are like described in the Livepeer white paper. People who are contributing bandwidth and CPU in order to encode and distribute live video. What does it mean for someone to play one of those roles in the network here? What are they going to have to do? How are they going to know when they have to interact with the protocol, when they have to take action?
Right. So at the beginning, people who will be participating are likely people who are kind of familiar with the command line interface. So we will have a tool to allow people to do that. And what that means is if you are a transcoder, that means you are providing your computer you're providing your computer's computation power to process other people's videos, so that these videos can be delivered to any device, to any kind of bandwidth condition, and any location in the world. And what that means is you will be running a piece of software that Livepeer creates, and on your computer, and joining the network and consuming other people's video, and in that process doing processing on it, and then putting the output video back into the network. And in that process, you will also earn Livepeer token for providing that service. And the people who are using your service would be paying you in Livepeer tokens.
Yeah. Cool. So when we get to the testnet, I think we've implemented the protocol. We've built the first version of the software that'll interact with it, mostly on your behalf. So you can just start Livepeer and not have to worry about paying too much attention. But I'm sure we'll run into all the bugs that we need to fix. We'll get a lot of feedback from people about how they went about setting this thing up and what worked and what didn't work. And those are the sorts of things we'll be iterating through and fixing over time as we move from this testnet towards production in the future. So for those of you interested in participating in the test network, we recommend you say hello in either our chat room at gitter.im/livepeer, or in our forum at forum.livepeer.org, and we will point you in the right direction to the documentation. And by the way, we accept all sorts of community contributions to documentation, tutorials, lessons learned as we go, because there's lots of people that are excited to get involved, and it's not so easy to kind of run all this stuff on the command line in a really technical way right now.
Yeah, and we will all be available there to help.
Cool. Okay, so that's the testnet update. Should we maybe answer some of the questions that our community members have sent in over the past few weeks?
All right.
Yeah. So we've got a list here from the chat room. Eric, any of these look interesting to you?
Yeah, maybe I'll ask this question. Doug. So YouTube and Facebook are free, so people won't pay anything for streaming. So why would people use Livepeer instead? And who would actually use this?
Good question. Yeah, we get that one a lot. So YouTube Live and Facebook Live do an amazing job of providing a platform for streaming and getting your live stream out to thousands or millions of people, and they don't charge you anything for that directly. And that's great, but we have to remember what level we're talking about. That's a very consumer level thought. They provide that one use case, and they actually do have a significant cost to provide that service themselves. They've invested a lot into live streaming. And in return, what they do is they monetize the time of your viewers. They show advertising, they collect data and sell it to advertisers or partners. And that could be a perfectly fine trade-off that people are willing to make. But anyone who wants to build their own live streaming application has to build their own infrastructure or pay for their own service. And those are the ones who are paying a lot of money right now for live streaming infrastructure. And using a decentralized network like Livepeer, rather than paying one closed proprietary centralized provider who's providing service at a high cost plus a margin, you can actually pay the Livepeer network at the cost that the market determines for doing all of that work. And we believe that due to a number of different economic impacts, that can be a lot cheaper, and it can bring the benefits of decentralization in terms of no single point of failure, being able to pay as you go and not need to provision excess capacity, the lack of a resistance to censorship, and the ability to embed crypto payments within. So it enables you to build very different types of use cases and applications than what Facebook or YouTube might be good for. And when you talk to creators and streamers, many of them are frustrated that they are unable to monetize their audiences and their time on Facebook and YouTube because those platforms kind of control their audiences and their experience and the monetization. And Livepeer is really this platform that's about the freedom to let you build whatever you want in a way that's cheaper than building on centralized infrastructure providers. I think the second thought for that question is people can build applications on Livepeer that are still free to use for consumers. It doesn't mean that every consumer is going to have to pay to access any stream, because that would be a huge blocker to get your stream out to millions of people for every use case. This just lets developers and publishers and broadcasters create whatever economic relationship they want to have with their users. And because they're paying this value into the network, all the participants in the network, from the creators to the people contributing their bandwidth and their compute to the bonders and delegators who participate in security of the network, the value will be distributed to them who are actually contributing the value, and not necessarily taxed off the top by a centralized application who's charging margin or using it to fund a different business. So again, it's really about freedom and empowerment and fair economic flow to the values that are contributed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, cool.
Cool. All right, so that's a popular question that we get. So let's talk about, here's another popular one about incentives. So what are the different ways that technical contributors can get Livepeer token and can become incentivized in the open source framework?
Yeah, so there are a couple ways to do that, and we've actually have been experimenting this ourselves as well. So we have a number of community members who are also software developers and have contributed to the Livepeer code base in different amounts. So for that, we have promised tokens for them, and as soon as our token becomes live, they will be getting the tokens for their contribution. And we're thinking about bounty programs where people will be claiming actual features and be paid for those features in the form of Livepeer tokens.
What about in the network itself?
Right. So if you are working within the network yourself, I think it's interesting to think about building applications on top of Livepeer that can have any kind of business model that's built in. So, for example, Livepeer, as it stands today, is only an infrastructure piece that allows people to kind of broadcast video and deliver video. But anyone can build a education platform on top of Livepeer, or a social entertainment platform on top of Livepeer. That way, they can also earn tokens that way. And also, if you are contributing your computer and being a transcoder, then you're getting paid kind of by participating in the Livepeer protocol, but basically for doing transcoding work for other broadcasters.
Right. So yeah, there's a number of different ways to basically participate in the network protocol. Eric mentioned transcoders, just running the software on your computer. There's also bonding and delegation, participating in the election of transcoders who are performing well and reviewing their stats and moving delegation around to ones who are performing well versus ones who may not be providing an adequate level of service. Because the protocol is inflationary, a new Livepeer token will be released over time. It's actually distributed to all these participants according to the algorithms in the protocol. And during the testnet, we'll get a good chance to see how the token distribution plays out across all these different roles.
Yep.
So, cool. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
All right. Let's see. Let's.
Should we talk about comparisons to traditional technologies? So,
Sure.
Right. So, popular question. Does decentralized live video broadcasting have any cost or performance advantage over centralized technologies?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good question because the answer is in some respects, yes, it does, and in other respects, no, there's actually a lack of efficiency in using decentralized technologies. So let's talk first about that lack of efficiency. So what are the things that create some extra costs in Livepeer today?
Right. So the extra costs come from, for example, we're using the Ethereum network to manage our smart contract and distribute tokens and basically execute our protocol. So for that, we have to pay gas costs to the Ethereum network, and that's actually an extra cost for that. And there's also there could be potential inefficiencies for validating the work. So because we have to the protocol has to work in a trustless way, which means it doesn't matter who is doing the work. You can trust that the work is done correctly. That means the network will actually have to do a little bit of extra work just to make sure that that the transcoders are doing the right work and being honest and validating the work that they do. A small percentage of them, but that's also an extra cost that comes with a decentralized approach.
Right. So those are the inefficiencies. So where do the efficiencies come from? I think that there's a really interesting effect that you see in these token-powered protocols. It's the nodes who are doing the work, they're running the software. If that software has about the same cost to run as a centralized alternative, then the nodes who are contributing their bandwidth and compute have about the same cost to provide this video encoding and distribution service. But some of the reward they're going to get for doing that work comes from kind of the newly released token in the protocol. And because that token may potentially have a value as perceived by the market, that token that they're earning is worth some amount. And that amount can offset the total cost that they need to charge. So if this is their total cost, this much comes from the newly minted token. That means that the portion of fees that they have to charge to a broadcaster can actually be lower than what they would be if they were not earning any newly minted token that has a value. And the effects of what that value is really interesting. Some of it is tied to the use of the network and the perceived demand for video broadcasting in the future. And some of it, for better or worse, is tied to speculation and people's belief that this network will be more valuable or more useful in the future. And speculation is a natural part of kind of the economic cycle, and there's booms and there's bursts and there's bubbles and they pop. But the nice thing is that the effect of speculation on this token actually can make broadcasting cheaper for existing broadcasters or people building new decentralized applications that want to include live video. And that's where you actually get some economic efficiency. So what we'll see, depending on all these levers that play out in this great economic experiment, is how the effects of potential growth of this network, distributing the economics across all of the participants, counterbalance with some of the overheads and cost of doing it in a decentralized way. And we'll also see how quickly we can bring down those costs, because we have a lot of smart people working on many different projects across this space that are all working on creating more efficiency in decentralized tech, from Ethereum scaling solutions to off-chain storage to off-chain verification of work to payment channels to all these things that are going to make it cheaper and easier to operate in the future.
Right. I would say one more thing that's interesting is one of the side effects of these blockchain projects is a lot of times you create a lot of really useful open source software, and especially for video streaming and the entire video stack. There is actually very little open source software out there today that's usable and scalable. And Livepeer will be we have been creating open source software, and our software will always be open source. So in that way, people who are using Livepeer also are saving licensing costs for proprietary software, for example.
Yep. Cool. All right. So I think we're about out of time for this one. I think this went pretty well, so we should probably come back and do it again sometime. Yep. Another format we're considering is Whiteboard Wednesdays. Get into some technical protocol details for those of you who are interested in that stuff. We recorded this. We'll get it online on IPFS, Swarm, maybe YouTube. We'll see. But yeah, feel free to drop questions in the future in the chat room, in the forums, and you know where to find us at livepeer.org. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks.